the Cooper Union is one of the best colleges in the United States, educating students in art, architecture, and engineering. As you've just seen, well, it's gone now, but as you've just seen, we are an academic union committed to the advancement of public discourse, and have been for over 165 years. This stage has hosted famous scientists, artists, politicians, scholars, and everyone in between, especially on the topic of climate change and climate justice. Since its opening, people of all walks of life have continued to gather here in the Great Hall to shape the pressing issues of their time, and today is no exception, as we have come here today to the world premiere of the 4th episode in the documentary series titled The Price of Milk, covering the environmental and societal impacts of the dairy industry.
The Cooper Climate Coalition was actually my very first exposure to climate activism. Now, I'm the New York City organizer for Climate Defiance. Climate Defiance started about 2 years ago when we blockaded the White House Correspondents' Dinner to demand action on climate. And we've started a national movement of naming and shaming climate criminals. I'm delighted to be back here at my dear Cooper Union, bringing together this incredible panel. So after the film, we will have a panel discussing the film and its ramifications within the current socio-political landscape. Our panelists are journalist Chloe Sorvino, student activist Marielle Williamson, director Nicholas Bruckman, and producer Jen Maylack. The panel will be moderated by my fellow Cooper alum, Alisa Petrosova.
Chloe Sorvino is a journalist who focuses predominantly on food, agriculture, and climate change. She has written a book entitled Raw Deal: Hidden Corruption, Corporate Greed, and the Fight for the Future of Meat, and has over a decade of experience reporting for Forbes, and has been featured in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, NPR, and many more. Marielle Williamson is a sophomore double majoring in international relations and public policy at Duke University in Kunshan, China. Her activism encompasses many different actions, including initiating a USDA lawsuit and serving as a lobbyist in Washington on food and agricultural bills. Most recently, the Freedom in School Cafeterias and Lunch Act, or the Fiscal Act.
Nicholas Bruckman is an Emmy-nominated director and the founder of the People's Television, an NYC and DC-based creative studio which produces films and narratives for global brands, foundations, and social movements. His most recent docuseries, The Price of Milk, which uncovers the hidden story behind the iconic Got Milk campaign, had its world premiere at Tribeca in June. Jen Maylack is a producer who has produced or co-produced a variety of projects which you've probably seen on your streaming services, such as the Emmy News and Documentary nominated At the Heart of Gold Inside the USA Gymnastics Scandal on HBO, Britney vs. Spears on Netflix, and Desperately Seeking Soulmate, Escaping Twin Flames Universe on Amazon Prime. Her most recent work has been producing The Price of Milk. And finally, our panel's moderator, Alisa Petrosova. Alisa co-founded the Cooper Climate Coalition in 2017. She is a narrative strategist currently leading strategic communications at the regenerative research and design studio Spherical, and the former director of climate storytelling programs at Good Energy. She has also worked as a researcher and world builder for Extrapolations on Apple TV+, and her work has appeared in NPR, Grist, and Freeze magazine. In 2024, she was named a Grist 50 Climate Leader for her innovative contributions at the intersection of culture and climate.
So please, silence your phones, turn your attention upwards, and enjoy the 4th installment of The Price of Milk: The Kids Are Not All Right.
Moo Brew is taking the one thing kids like, and that's coffee. But it's allowing us to get what they need, which is 8-ounce servings of milk. And so we're combining that with the coffee and adding in some flavor, just like they'd get an iced coffee at Starbucks. What you having, sweetie? cinnamon vanilla. We're offering the kids a healthy, sugar-free drink. It kind of lets them get what they need, maybe without them fully understanding it. The USDA set guidelines up for school nutrition as to what we need to offer, and one is milk. And that's in order to get our federal funding. So milk is pivotal in that big picture.
Thanks everyone for being here. What we just watched is storytelling as resistance. For decades, Big Dairy weaponized storytelling, like we just saw those iconic Got Milk mustaches, those dreamy farm commercials, to make milk feel as American as apple pie. They didn't just sell product, they sold us an identity. But tonight's episode flips the script. It uses those exact same narrative tools to expose the human costs and climate realities they've spent billions trying to hide. The stakes are higher than ever. This weekend, I heard Reverend Yearwood, CEO of Hip Hop Caucus, put it this way. Our parents fought for equality in the 20th century, but in the 21st century, we're fighting for existence. And leading that existential fight are young activists like Marielle, who refuse to quietly inherit a broken world and are turning their stories into weapons of change. I'll start off with Nick. Do you want to tell us about the episodes leading up to 4, since we just watched a conclusion of sorts?
Sure, yeah, thank you so much. It's appreciate everybody at Climate Defiance and Cooper Union Climate and Oatly team for putting this on. It's awesome to be in this historic venue, and really honored that Marielle is here and to celebrate her incredible activism. The first 3 episodes take you through all of the different aspects of the way our government is involved in milk, primarily through the lens of the Got Milk campaign of the 90s, and you guys got a little taste of that at the end. And we chose that lens to look at it because Got Milk is so totally iconic for anybody of my generation. You knew about Got Milk, right? Before, like, I know you had it in your school, right? And even so, 15, 20 years later, Got Milk is still just like totally embedded into our culture, and very few people understand that it's essentially a government program. And so when we got the opportunity for support from the Oatly team to do something about milk in America, we knew that was the entry point, and that led us on this wild ride that ends with the story you guys just saw on screen.
And Nick, can you tell us a little bit about, as you peeled back the layers of the story, how youth activism, systemic racism, public health effects emerged as kind of the beating heart of this episode?
Yeah, so we really didn't know when we first had this idea of making something about milk that it would like weave its tentacles into every other issue. And I think what got me excited about doing this project with Jen, our producer, who found Marielle and her story, and Yoni Brook, my co-director, was that milk is like the most boring, basic, vanilla thing you could possibly imagine. And then if you look at it closely, it's this prism that reflects everything in American society, from capitalism to racism to obviously the food system and kind of everything in between. Even the mechanics of how our government works is really in that white glass. And so that was a cool angle for us to approach. And I think, yeah, you see here, I personally didn't know, investigating this, that dairy is a product that falls like pretty squarely on colonial lines, and it's sort of shocking that I think most people don't know that, and Marielle and other activists, I think, are helping the world know about it, and hopefully the film and series is supporting that and their work.
Yeah, thanks for that, Nick. And Marielle, do you want to tell us a little bit more about how your activism began? I'm so fascinated about, you know, who you spoke to. Were you supported by like your parents, your friends, or was this kind of like an independent battle? And how did you go from something feels off here to I'm going to sue?
Yeah, first of all, thank you to everyone at Climate Defiance and the Cooper Union as well, and to all of you. And to answer your question, I think if we think about what cow's milk is, we're told at the age of 2 to stop drinking our mother's milk and then switch to drinking the breast milk of the mother of a different species. And it's no different than dog's milk, giraffe milk, mouse milk, yet somehow that one is normalized. And so I think even just thinking about that, it's like, wow, this is a little bit weird. But really it started with a TED Talk, which if anyone's interested, it's called The Ostrich Effect, The Truth We Hide From Ourselves by Ed Winters on YouTube. And then from there I did internships, and I learned more about it. And then I just became aware of all this propaganda that was right in front of us in schools, all the colorful milk cartons in the cafeteria. And then it was in trying to do this campaign and learning about this policy that I realized, wow, this is a systemic issue.
And Chloe, your book, Raw Deal, exposes how just 8 companies control most of America's meat production. We're seeing similar consolidation in dairy. And can you tell us more about how the monopolistic structures shape the narratives we hear about food, safety, nutrition, and climate impacts?
Yeah, absolutely. And I am also so inspired just to be here, to be hearing your words of activism. My book, Raw Deal, is about the meat industry, and you interviewed me kind of early on in this process, so I'll say that I actually have been on a biogas bubble, and it was after you interviewed me for the documentary. I didn't really realize I was going to go there, and it's such a kind of clear example of capitalism running amok and environmental injustice, and how that can extrapolate and become deeply, deeply ingrained in our system, like our energy system, and that's the part that really kind of frightens me, because so I was at Smithfield. It was a meatpacking plant. It wasn't a dairy, but the way that the manure lagoons work and the bubbles they put over them to try to capture the methane, which is very much a Band-Aid, as it was said on the documentary, they work the same. And so I was there, and this meat guy was like, "Oh, you want to get up it?" And I'm personally one of the people who know how dangerous the fumes can be. And how many actually, families have died just by having people fall into them when they're not bubbled up, and then the whole family dies because it's one person trying to go in after the other. And it happens all the time. But so I was dared, and I had to go on up there. And really, when I got up there, it was this kind of jaw-dropping moment for me, because I was looking down this toxic pile of slop and just seeing how deeply intertwined everything is. And it was a moment that I really still think about, especially as I think about, continuing to change hearts and minds in this fight for climate justice, because justice is so deeply intertwined in how we need to change the food system. And so I'll say that, and I'll say that their economics of the dairy industry, which is how we've gotten to this place, they've been completely ruined by the government supports that have then manipulated demand past the point of return. And now we're at this place where the government's almost entirely propping up this massive, massive industry with, billions and billions of dollars on the line, and small family farmers left are just getting squeezed out, the last ones remaining. And it's a really serious time. The way I think the economics can work the best is for organic dairy, smallholder dairy. That's really kind of the future. But otherwise, it's really continuing down this path that you guys have laid out really well in this documentary.
Yeah, last Friday I just watched it's the 25th anniversary of Erin Brockovich, and I was really stunned by how some of this imagery just looks exactly like from that film. But Jen, can you tell us a bit more about your process for forging the human connections of this film? I felt like a lot of these abstract climate issues became so deeply personal through the ways that y'all told the story. So I was curious about how you found those folks.
Amazing. Well, we're so lucky to have 2 of our participants in the project on the stage with us. So what is so interesting about documentaries is, you'll see a story map. Like if you watch SNL, you'll see here's first act, second act, whatever. For us, nothing you plan at the beginning, very often it doesn't look like that at the end, and that's actually a great thing. That means your project has gone so well that you've gotten to meet such fascinating people, and you've found so much rich texture that you get to change it and you get to expand it and grow out. So for this project, we actually spoke with a number of people who we never filmed with. They were just great resources and great people to learn from. And many of them actually connected us onwards with people they thought we should meet. But something that I think is so important with documentaries is, for us, we're at work, it's part of our job, but for people who aren't working on it, they're giving up their time, which is just the most amazing resource you have. And so I don't think you should ever have a conversation with someone you don't really want to talk to. And by that I mean, you shouldn't know how the conversation is going to go. It's not like you're looking at a jigsaw like puzzle and you're looking at the box and you're going, this is exactly how it's going to look and this is how we fit in. Like every conversation should really lead you somewhere and you should learn something from it, which I'm grateful that we ended up where we did.
Can I ask how long the process was?
I think we started like late 2021, early 2022.
I think my interview was 21.
Wow, that's so cool.
Nick, do you want to tell us a little bit more about balancing the urgent, the educational, and how you kind of engaged folks across the 4 episodes and how that balance came out?
Yeah, totally. I think a couple things about that. I mean, there's obviously a lot of great factory farming, animal rights documentaries, and Food Inc. and Inconvenient Truth, and a lot of stories that I think have in many ways moved the needle. But of course, we're still having those same conversations. And so for me, as a storyteller, I think it's really important to try to entertain. Like, there's all kinds of other events going on with much more knowledgeable climate speakers than me and Jen, and you know, great white papers being written all the time. And so whenever we film anything, I think my first question on any documentary is like, why is this a movie? And the Got Milk campaign really helped us because, again, the advertising is so incredible. I mean, they really are like the best ads ever made. If you watch the original Aaron Burr commercials, which we unpack in the beginning. And so that really was like, oh, that is really cinematic. Like, how did those ads come together? And for this episode, I think it's probably the most serious in some ways, dealing with the health and human consequences. But fortunately, all of the dairy industry material is really unintentionally hilarious. And so the way we tried to balance it was like really making sure that we had the dairy industry's POV as much as possible. Including Tyler, the dairy farmer, who was really generous with us and showing his perspective, which represented pretty much big dairy. And I think having both perspectives is incredibly important. And I just want to echo Chloe's point. One thing that you don't see in the series is for us, especially with the support of Plant Milk Company and Oatly and the support and the kind of following of various vegan activists, we really wanted the kind of series to highlight and focus on the political problems that enabled all of this, as opposed to the dietary choices. And of course, I think those are incredibly important, and I think Marielle and others can speak to what people can do on the consumer level, but what we wanted to do is highlight a political problem that, to Chloe's point, is much bigger than milk. It's about what happens when industry influence over government runs amok. And milk is like actually just a kind of hilariously bad example of it.
Yeah, I was really fascinated to see that Got Milk actually like won the cultural battle, but didn't actually improve the sales. That was such an interesting factoid from an earlier episode. I also wanted to point out the butterboard factoid, right? The butterboards were actually invented by the dairy industry to get us to sell more dairy, if y'all have seen that on Instagram. Was there a favorite factoid like that of yours that you learned?
Well, I mean, mainly just the like stuffed crust pizza of it all, you know? I think that's like the one fact that like most opens people's minds to how, and that I think gets to the bigger thesis of this thing, which is not so much about milk or about government, but just being careful about what you see and where our media and messaging comes from. And I think once you realize that the stuffed crust pizza was essentially invented by the federal government to support the dairy industry, then anything else is possible.
I remember when I was in middle school, pizza became a vegetable. That's the government made that. Marielle, you closed your story with, you still need to take on the USDA. Do you want to update us on that story? What does that look like? And where are you in your David versus Goliath battle now?
So yeah, unfortunately, the USDA did dismiss the lawsuit in December of last year, 2024, which was a small setback, but with that came a lot of positive things. You may have heard the Fiscal Act, which I believe was mentioned in the introduction, recently passed this summer, at least through the first phase, and that allows for the complete removal of doctors' notes in all of schools that follow that are under the National School Lunch Program in the U.S., which removes a significant barrier, even though it's not the end goal. It's a huge, huge step, and that was Switch for Good who made that happen. And also, there's activists all over the US and in university campuses and high schools, students who are trying to pursue similar kinds of changes abroad as well. I go to university in China now, and there's so many NGOs, so many partners that advocate for the same thing, and I think that's what we need to hold on to.
Thanks, Marielle. And Chloe, do you want to tell us a little bit more if you have any advice for young activists or people trying to tell the story, how they craft these stories and kind of cut through the noise and move people to action?
Yeah, first I'll also say that, I've been at Forbes a decade. I wrote this book a few years ago. I've written about a lot of cheese and dairy companies. Overall, what I've learned is that we've been told that we must vote with our dollars, that's this be-all, end-all, but really it's a false messiah when government supports are manipulating demand entirely beyond the point of recognition. And when, when billionaires and few corporations have full control on what we have access to in the first place. And so I think while that can be, kind of a startling thing to confront, it also comes with a lot of empowerment, because once you realize that, then you really do understand that there is a way that my $1 can make a difference compared to, the Tyson billionaire's dollar. And that's if I take that dollar out of the mainstream system. Obviously it's harder in a public school situation where you're being forced literally to consume when you don't want to, or your body doesn't want to consume it. But, taking a step out of that, I think we can then say, creating an alternative system, supporting, maybe it is alternatives in this case, right? And I think it's actually quite interesting that the plant-based movement hasn't latched on to that a little bit more, because I've always heard from some founders who were trying to actually create more authentic kinds of plant-based milks and cheeses, back in the day when they were getting a lot of funding. That's when I first learned about just, how much lactose intolerance there is in many different communities and cultures. I also never liked it, so I was like, oh, wow, I think it's everyone, or most of everyone. Anyway, so I think, there's something to latch on to there, because there is power, and when we can create our own systems and then use our collective action to make that dollar actually matter. And, I think what we really need right now is bold actions like Marielle has done, and what student activists are doing around the country and the world. I mean, now is the time to be radical. Now is the time, I think, I'm just a journalist, I'm just a writer, but I think now is the time to really confront systems of injustice and maybe rethink, advocacy and protests and everything, because now is the time not to hold back. Now is the time for as much urgency as possible.
Can I ask each one of you to tell us what is one thing that we can do? Chloe, you're off the hook, but
I'll start.
You have more.
Yeah, I'll absolutely start. So one thing we actually can do, one of the things I think is actually one of the best ways to try to impact local schools and public school purchasing, because actually purchasing can be a massively way to scale, right? Because there is so much scale that these school districts can get, and there are efforts to get better purchasing out there and more regional purchasing, like purchasing that doesn't go to the big dairies that are being distributed by these massive distributors. Money that would go to local makers of a fair amount of things. One of the ways to do that is just simply to run for local school board. It's a very often underlooked part of public policy, but it's a place where you can get shit done, because not a lot of people are actually spending the time and effort and energy to do that. So if you care about food systems, it's a way to make actually kind of quick, scalable change. Quickly, you're obviously also going to come up against this massive David and Goliath system, but there are ways to try to change purchasing and have impact with some quickness, which we need.
I would say, I'm biased, but I would say tell your story. And that's what a lot of the activists and the folks in the series did. They told us their story, and it's what Marielle did to move the needle. It was what happened to her, the experience in her cafeteria of being denied a milk alternative that made her lawsuit so potent and got her featured on the news and on the stage today. And we were very lucky to have the support of Oatly empowering us to tell something on the big screen and cinematic and have the freedom to make this. But I will say, and I really mean this, that the tools for powerful storytelling are in all of our pockets. And actually, in my view, despite all of the horrors of the algorithm, things really can break out, and people can have platforms that back in the Got Milk days you could only have by having $1 million ad. You really can, if you are vulnerable and tell your story in a powerful way on social media, have really outsized impact, so you don't have to be a filmmaker to do it. And so I think it's about telling your own story to the world.
Thanks, Nick.
Yeah, I'll echo that just to say, I think like 10, 15 years ago, the idea of posting something online, the joke was it was slacktivism, like you were slacking off, you weren't going out, you were just sitting behind a screen. And I think obviously the world has changed so much since then that there's so much that can be accomplished with an online presence. And I really would encourage people to, pursue, storytelling and pursue local journalism.
Jamal Bowman, who was featured in the beginning of this episode, and I think earlier in the series, has this quote, which is, after 100 no's, there will be one yes, and that yes is worth all of it. And I think that's something that we need to really hold on to, that no is not the end all be all, or if there is a no, we keep trying, we keep pushing, and eventually there will be a yes. And I think we see that so much within communities of activists, regardless of what avenue you're advocating for climate change in. So I would also say that and holding on to community, purpose, passion.
Chloe, do you want to give us a snapshot of the current moment? What's going on in the MAHA movement?
Yeah, the MAHA of it all. This documentary series really sets up a really fundamental basis of knowledge for where we're going in down this dark kind of tunnel, which I'm not sure has an end, which I hope though. So the second MAHA report just came out. One of the biggest wins amid this report, right? It was like a place where big ag and big food got a lot of wins after a lot of pushback from this first report, and there was a lot of splintering in this overall MAHA movement, pesticides being one of the major things that the splintering is around, but also slipping in around that was massive milk policy, in the sense that there had been pushback dietarily for lower fat milk to be what's served in schools, and now they're going to have to only serve whole milk, and it will be like kind of it seems like there is a massive kind of undercurrent of whole milk now getting a new wave of pushing through public schools through this MAHA effort. And so I have no idea what that form will take and when, but it was one of the few actual kind of solid, specific things in the report. So take that for what you want.
Thanks for that. So the price of milk is gaining momentum. As we heard, the first 3 episodes premiered at Tribeca and at the Rhode Island International Film Festival and won an award for Best Series. Jen, do you want to tell us what's next?
Yes, I'd love to. Well, first of all, shamelessly, please go follow the Price of Milk doc. It's the best place to get upcoming information from us. And we think it's got some really fun stuff. So next we're headed to the St. Louis International Film Festival, and we're also working on expanding our impact screenings so more people, like the people in this room who experienced our episode 4 premiere, will get to see the series.
Amazing. So that's all the time we have. We opened tonight talking about some narrative warfare, how stories shape our reality. Maybe we can end with each one of you telling us one story you want audiences to carry forward. Or like a favorite piece of media currently that's going on that's changing that.
I'll go back to my anecdote about standing on top of the digester bubble. They had me wear, I was assured I wouldn't fall in, and if I did, it would be okay, because they put me in a suit that was pretty much what you wear if you go like heli skiing. So if there's an avalanche, you can kind of thrust yourself up in this like kind of that massive power of, I don't know what, force. And I think that's the kind of like Band-Aid that we're just like moving forward with the entire food system right now. And it was a metaphor that really startled me. And that's what I'll leave you with.
Yeah, I would just say, to shamelessly plug the series, that I'm really excited for people to watch the whole show, especially the stories of the small dairy farmers who you guys just got a tease of at the end. What's so amazing about them is that the 2 farmers that you see at the end sued the Got Milk campaign. They went all the way to the Supreme Court to end it. And I think for a lot of the activism that we're discussing, which is not just about food choice, but about collective action, as we've been discussing. It's really inspiring to see small farmers go up against the current food system. And it also, I think, broadens the conversation to people who may not be vegan or also eat dairy. And so just echoing what Jen said, we are launching an impact campaign for this. We're really excited about students seeing it. We're planning to show it at animal sanctuaries. There's another episode that touches on animal rights. We're planning to show it at college campuses. We're hoping to show it with the Oatly team in Washington, D.C., with policymakers, with people who are working on the issues that Marielle is working on. So I want to use this last platform to tell people to follow us on Instagram. And hopefully book the series near you. And let's get Marielle on the road, too, telling her story.
Yeah. Well, I think it's hard because you hear there's no one-size-fits-all solution to really big problems like, climate change or agriculture, and I think that can be really dispiriting. But I think actually after working on this, I feel the opposite. I feel quite optimistic because I look at people like Marielle and I look at our subjects in this film, and I think that incremental or, not 100% complete actions can have quite large ramifications. So I hope people leave here feeling that way.
Yeah, I wouldn't point to like a specific media story I've seen recently, but just overall, there's a lot of news about people standing up to and protesting this sort of greenwashing that happens by, big agriculture, big oil during Climate Week, things like that. So I think it's really heartwarming, and I just feel very optimistic seeing how aware people are of corruption and are so bold in fighting against it. And echoing also what you said about social media as a tool, because it really does have an impact.
Thank you. And I'd like to thank all of our organizing partners, Cooper Climate Coalition, Climate Defiance, Oatly, and also our amplification partners, the Hollywood Climate Summit and the Climate Film Festival. I'm going to do it one more time. It's at the Price of Milk Doc on Instagram. And if you'd like to host a free impact screening for your group, visit priceofmilk.com to register. Thank you, everyone, for being here.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.